the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Gambia. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is a continuation of Series 20 on the 2023 African Cup, played in 2024. We've done a full and short version on the groups and teams and are now looking at the players of each team, this episode covering Gambia's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. We think that'll be in early January. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we compiled today and see who made it and who didn't. We'll also cover a couple of other things that I'll talk about at the end of this mediacast. We did do a mediacast on the players of Gambia going into the 2021 African Cup. That was in January 2022. Check the links in the show notes for that. That provided biographies on the candidates in quite a bit of detail. And since a lot of that is still relevant, we've decided not to commit ourselves to full player mediacasts every 2 years for the African region. So we'll be treating this one as more of an update. In that series, we were able to show who made and who didn't make the squad, but we could only go as far as predicting the starters. So here, we'll begin with the list we compiled for the previous cup. We'll review who made the squad and then update by saying who the starters were. And then we'll turn our attention to 2023 and update the players based on their participation over the past 2 years. We will thus emerge with a list of new players and their likelihood of making the squad. Also, we're going to put a few players in the spotlight. These will be players who were not covered in the mediacast for the previous cup and who have a good chance of starting. So any main players that we don't put in the spotlight were covered in the mediacast for the 2021 cup. And that will be most of the players, and the information in the previous mediacast is not too outdated. So again, we refer you to the link in the show notes. For fun, we're going to finish with our early predictions of starters, and we'll let you know what to expect in part two. We have made a separate video on what we'll be covering over the next 9 months. YouTube watchers can see the link to that on the screen, and it can also be found in the show notes for both watchers and listeners. In short, we have just completed our series on the groups, teams and players, or at least part one of the players for the 2023 Asian Cup. And now we're focused on the 2023 African Cup. So we've done the groups and teams, and we will be obviously looking at the players here. We've done about half the players so far. So both of those tournaments are in early 2024, and we have also started coverage of our World Cup 2026 qualifying, and we'll turn our attention to that once these two tournaments are done. Let's begin then, moving into section 2, our look at the candidates, and we begin with the manager. The manager is Tom Saint-Fiet. And we have his name in green here because we did predict that he was a starter. In other words, that means we thought he would not get fired before the cup, and indeed he wasn't. He's been the manager of Gambia since 2018. They didn't make the World Cup in 2019, but they did in 2021, and he led them through it. And they did well there, actually, beating Guinea in the round of 16. So that means passing the group stage, of course, and only losing to host Cameroon in the quarterfinals. So a good result for them there. And Tom Saint-Fiet remains as manager. Again, we have biographical information on on him. He's been the manager of many national teams, but we're going to leave that to a review of the previous mediacast we did, if you want that information. So Tom Saintfiet, we believe will also not be fired before this tournament, but we'll discuss our kind of starters at the end. So just a hint, he is a starter in our opinion, because we think he will get there. Okay, let's move on to goalkeepers. And we begin with our look at our candidates back in the previous cup. And at that time, we had Boubacar Gay as a definite candidate, and we had Sheikh Sibi as a likely candidate. We had a player seemingly off the squad in Modou Job. And again, we have some of those highlighted in colors. Those of you who are looking at YouTube, we thought Boubacar Gay would be the starting keeper, and the yellow highlight indicates that we thought they would be bench players. So, of course, the other two we thought were backup. So we'll actually remove those highlights as we enter into our discussion here. And yes, we did think that that was quite a thin selection of candidates, and so we were not surprised when a couple of new candidates were added when the preliminary squad came out. So new candidates Lamine Sarr and Lamine Seydi were added to the list there. So let's see what became of these players. So the definite candidate, Boubacar Gay, was actually selected, but he wasn't on the bench for games 1 and 2. We never figured out the reason for that. But upon his return, he did become the starting keeper for games 3, 4, and 5. So we were kind of right in thinking of him as the starting keeper there. Since that cup, then, he has started 12 of their 16 games. That's over the past 2 years and includes the previous cup. He was on the bench for the last 2 of those, though, and absent, as we saw, for the first 2 matches of the African Cup. So Boubacar Gay, because he was absent for the last 2, on the bench for the last 2 matches, we move him from definite down to likely. We're not sure if it means that they're thinking of changing the starting keeper. If they do change the starting keeper, it would probably be Modou Job. So I'll deal with him next. Modou Job was also selected for the squad. He did start those first 2 games, and then Boubacar Gay took over. Since the previous African Cup, he has started 4. So the first 2 in the cup there, and then the last 2 games over the past 2 years, and he was on the bench for 11 and absent only for 1 match. So we have him as a definite candidate in terms of a definite selection for the squad. That we put him as a definite candidate doesn't necessarily indicate that he will be the starter, but we'll talk about that later. So Modou Job moves up from possible to definite now. And the other keeper we had as a likely candidate, Sheikh Sibi, was selected for the cup. He was on the roster, but saw no action there. And he was not called up since the African Cup. So a bit surprising there, but last appeared in the 2021 African Cup. So we now have removed, or we're going to remove him from the list for this cup. Let's take a quick look at the other 2 candidates that were added. So Lamine Sarr was not selected for the cup despite being added there. He was selected for the preliminary squad and didn't make the final cut. Over the past 2 years, he hadn't started any of the 16 games, but he was on the bench for 8 of those, and that includes the last 6 matches. And so we think he will now be a possible candidate for this cup. That's Lamine Sarr. The other one who was added to the preliminary roster there was Lamine Seydi. He was neither selected for the squad, nor has he been called up since. He only plays, it seems, in local tournaments like the African Nations Championship. Okay, so Lamine Seydi is removed from the squad. So we're left with our list for basically the going into this cup, our list for this cup, and we have definite candidate Modou Job, a likely candidate Boubacar Gay, and possible candidate Lamine Sarr. And again, a bit thin in the pickings there, so we wouldn't be surprised to see another one added, or perhaps one of those two keepers who were removed coming back. Nevertheless, this is the situation then. We have kind of covered it, but it was Modou Job in the first two games of the Cup, but it seems like Boubacar, I think I've been saying his name wrong there, Boubacar Gay was always the starting keeper, and when he came back, he started not only those games, but the games after the Cup. So he continued as a starter all the way until the last two games there, the World Cup qualifying games in November, where Job took over the starting spot. So that leaves us a bit uncertain as to who will be the starting keeper for this Cup. But we'll talk about that in the spotlight review at the end. Let's move on to defenders, and we look at central defenders. So back in 2022, or the previous African Cup, we had a definite candidate in Omar Colley. We had a likely candidate in James Gomez, and another in Boubacar Sane. And then three possible candidates, Mohamed Mbaye and Modou Georgiou, and Noah Sonko Sundberg. And we had a couple of players who seemed to be off the squad, but we won't deal with them. But we did have a new candidate added to the squad when the preliminary roster came out, and that is Salifou Koulibaly. So let's look at the fate of these. No, I'll just mention that we nominated Colley and Gomez as the starters, and we'll now erase those highlights and talk about how they did. So Omar Colley was selected, and he was the starter, as we predicted, started and finished all 5 games there. And he has since started 15 of their 16 games over the past 2 years, just one match that he wasn't selected for. So he will remain a definite candidate for us. Next, James Gomez. We were correct there too. He did start and finish all 5 games in the Cup, so of course was selected. And he has since started 10 of their 16 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2, including the last match. So benched for the last match, as well as not being selected for 3 matches. So James Gomez has recently changed clubs. It seems like a bit of a step up from Horsens in Denmark, a club I'm not really familiar with, to Sparta Prague in Czech Republic, so one of the biggest clubs in the Czech Republic there. So James Gomez, but he remains for us as a likely candidate there, not selected for 3 matches there, but probably will be. Next, we had Boubacar Sane, and he was selected for the squad, but he only appeared briefly in game 1 as a substitute, and since then started 8 of their 16 games, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5, so regularly called up. He was absent for 1 game that was actually in the 2021 Cup. So pretty much a definite there for Boubacar Sane, but we have him at the likely level here. We're pretty conservative about these things. Okay, next, Mohamed Mbaye was our first of 3 possible candidates, and he actually started game 3 in the Cup, but he was subbed out at halftime and otherwise appeared only briefly as a substitute. However, since the African Cup, he has not been called up. So we are removing Mohamed Mbaye from the list. And we move on to our second candidate, Modou Georgiou. And he was not selected for the squad. He was for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut to 28 players. So I'll just pause there and explain. Because of COVID, the roster was expanded to 28 players. And that also means, well, still 23 players were brought to the bench. So that means for every game, 5 players were not even called up to the bench. So that's why we sometimes have players on the roster but not on the bench. Okay, so Modou Djardju, not selected for the Cup, and in fact has not been selected since. So his last game for the national team was in October 2021, and we remove him from the list here. Next, our third possible candidate is Noah Sonko Sundberg, and he also has moved clubs. I'll deal with that right away. So he was with Östersunds in Sweden and has moved to first Levski Sofia in Bulgaria and Ludogorets Razgrad in Bulgaria. Kind of a sideways move. Maybe a bit of an upward move, but he had been with a bigger club in Sweden, AIK, before that. He was born in Sweden as well. Anyway, he was selected for the Cup, and he was not even on the bench for game 1, but he did gain a starting position in the Cup for games 2, 3, and 4. However, it was not as a central defender, but as a right back in all 3 starts. And we're going to see that he often does play as right back over the last 2 years. Anyway, he started 10 of their 16 games over the past 2 years, absent for 2 games in the Cup, actually, and not selected for 4 others. So Noah Sonko Sundberg moved from possible up to likely candidate for us here. And finally, we look at Salafu Koulibaly. Salafu Koulibaly, and he was named to the preliminary squad, but was not selected for the Cup and not called up since, other than for African Nations Championship matches. So Salafu Koulibaly also removed from the squad here. Doesn't seem a candidate this time around. And we do have one player to add at the possible but unlikely level, and that is Marian Sarr. He is German-born and appeared in March 2023. Was around for a little bit. Was on the bench for a couple of matches, but not selected for the last 4. So kind of came and went, Marian Sarr, but we'll put him as a possible but unlikely candidate. All right, so let's finish the section by reviewing the candidates and then reviewing the position over the past couple of years. And we have Omar Colley as a definite candidate, James Gomez, Boubacar Sane, and Noah Sonko Sundberg, all as likely candidates, and then Marian Sarr as a possible but unlikely candidate. So in the Cup, it was Colley and Gomez in all 5 games of the Cup. Sane joined the rotation after the Cup, and Sonko Sundberg also joined the central defense rotation when they went with a 3-man backline for a couple of games. So now it seems all 4 of them are in rotation, although Omar Colley is the player that is used the most. Okay, that is central defense, and we move on to left back, and we have Ibu Toure we should go back to the list that we compiled for the previous Cup, so we'll do that. And we have Leon Guara, or we had Leon Guara as a likely candidate, and we had 3 possible candidates. The first one was Robin Bjornhon Jata, Pa Modou Jagni, and Ibu Toure, all possible candidates there. And we had nominated Pa Modou Jagni as the starter there, and Ibu Toure as the backup. I don't know whether we made those decisions after the preliminary roster came out. I kind of suspect we do, because we ignored the likely candidate there. So let's begin with him, actually. First, we'll kind of clear the highlights from the visual. And we'll begin with the likely candidate, Leon Guara. He was not selected for the Cup. He was named to the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. And he has not been called up since. So last appeared for the national team in November 2021. So we were dead wrong on that one. And he is not going to be on the list for the upcoming Cup. Next, we had Robin Bjornholm Jata. He also was not selected for the squad, not even the preliminary squad here. So the Norwegian-born player last appeared for the national team in 2021, June of 2021, and he also is removed from our list here because he has not appeared over the past 2 years. So Pamodu Jagni was selected for the Cup. In fact, he was captain of the team, and he started all the games except game 2, where he was on the bench. However, he was not selected after the Cup. He's not too old, just 34 years old, so getting old, but one would think young enough to have one more tournament in him. He did suffer a bit of a drop in his club affiliation. He was playing for FC Zurich, one of the bigger clubs in Switzerland, and dropped down to Dietcon in Switzerland, and I'm not familiar with that name, so I would say that's a drop down in kind of status, as it were. Anyway, Pamodu Jagni also removed from our list here. So we're down to the last possible candidate there, and it is Ibu Toure. Ibu Toure was selected for the Cup and started games 1, 2, and 5. And you may be going, what's that about? Because we saw that Jagni started 4 of the games. Well, Ibu Toure only started 1 game as left back, and the other 2 a little out of position. He started as a right back and as a left winger once. So he did get 3 starts there, but he was out of game 4 with food poisoning there. Since the Cup, he has started 12 of their 16 games and subbed in for 1, on the bench for 1, but not selected for the last 2 matches. So we've seen that with a few teams, that they make changes right at the end, and we're not sure what it means. We'll have to see if it means anything when the final roster comes out, but we don't think it really means he's off the squad or anything. Anyway, Ibu Toure, we move up to a likely candidate, that doubt about the last couple of games. And we're going to add 1 player to the list here, and it's Ismaila Jome. And we add him actually at the likely level. He got his first cap in November 2022 and started 2 of their remaining games there. And was on the bench for 4, and just 1 of the last 7 matches that he was not selected for. So he's been selected for 6 of the last 7 games. That's why we have him at the likely level. But we don't think he will be a starter, but we will put a brief spotlight on him just in case he is. So he's 29 years old, so quite late in joining the team, and he plays in the USA for San Antonio since 2023, but with Portland Timbers before that. So Ismaila Jome, a likely candidate. And let's now summarize the players we have. So we're left with 2 likely candidates here, Ibu Toure and Ismaila Jome, the newcomer. And let's summarize the position. So as we saw, it was Jagni in 4 games of the Cup, and Ibu Toure in 1 game, but Jagni didn't appear after the Cup, and it was Toure consistently in the position for the 8 games of African Cup qualifying. And he really wasn't out of position as a left winger, because sometimes left defenders move up to left wingers when there's a three-man defense, and that was what happened twice over those two games. So does move up to the left wing position. In the last two games, the World Cup qualifiers, it was Joe May in one of the games, and then left midfielder Jacob Mendy, who we will meet soon, taking over the position. So we're not really sure why Toure was not selected, but we still think he seems the likely starter. Okay, before we move on to what right backs, I want to redress something that's been bugging me this whole time back in central defense. So I said in the cup that Gomez and Colley started all 5 games, and that was the case. But I also said Boubacar Sane started one of the games, but I was wrong. He appeared in one of the games as a substitute. Not as a starter. That's been kind of eating at my mind the whole time we've been talking, that logical problem. Anyway, here we go, over to the right back position, and we'll take a look at what we had in 2022, the previous cup, and we thought Abdoulaye Diallo would be a likely candidate, and Seydi Janko also a likely candidate. Furthermore, we thought that Diallo would be the starter, but we did think Seydi Janko could be. And we were pretty accurate there, because it turns out that Abdoulaye Diallo, sometimes called Abdi Diallo, was a starter, but not at the right back position. And in fact, we've recoded him now into a attacking midfielder. Actually, he kind of plays all over the field quite impressively, but recently he has been, I think, well, still all over the field. We were recoding him as an attacking midfielder. That's kind of in and about where he seems to be playing more recently. So let's remove the highlights and then see how things turned out for these two candidates. As we said, Abdoulaye Diallo was selected for the squad. He started games 1, 2, and 4 there, but he was actually injured for game 5 and not even on the bench there. But we'll deal with him as an attacking midfielder in terms of his chances for this 2023 Cup. So we'll come back to him. Seydi Janko, so we'll remove him actually from the list of right backs, but he will reappear, Abdi Diallo. Let's deal with our second candidate, the likely candidate, Seydi Janko. And he was not a starter, actually. He subbed into game 2, but then did start 2 games, games 3 and 5 there. And he also got food poisoning, so I think for game 4. So I think it was kind of a team thing that happened to Gambia during the Cup. Anyway, Seydi Janko has since started 4 of their 16 games over the past 2 years, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2, but 9 matches that he was not selected for. So we had him as likely before, but we now move him down to the possible level. So that is Seydi Janko, and I realize actually I didn't put a player on the list at the possible level. That was Mohamed Sane. He had been on the list as a possible candidate. He was not selected for the Cup, though, even for the preliminary squad there. But he has appeared since. He started 3 of their 16 games over the past 2 years, subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 4, so not selected for 5 matches. But that includes the well, that includes all of the 2021 African Cup matches. So he's been consistently selected since after the Cup, but only starts a few. So we are going to leave him at the possible level. I actually think he should be, yeah, I'm going to actually put him up to the likely level in terms of making the squad, because he's been consistently called up. Unlike Seydi Janko, who is a more likely starter, I think, but who has missed nine matches, not selected for 9 of the matches. So there we have it. That is the right back position. So we'll summarize by saying the candidates. We have a likely candidate in Mohamed Sane and a possible candidate in JD Sancho, although we think JD Sancho is more likely to be the starter there. If either of them starts at all, in fact, because the right back position has been one of players, out of position players coming in. In the cup, it was left back Toure one time, the central defender Sonko Sundberg 3 times, and the central midfielder Ngum, who we'll meet shortly, 1 time. And it continued to be out of position players after the cup. Mostly central defenders, especially Sonko Sundberg, but also James Gomez there. Janko did play the position twice and Mohamed Sane once. That's why we think Janko is a bit ahead in the pecking order there. Each of those players played one of the last 2 games. So whether they will go into the cup with one of the players coded as a right back here, or one of the out of position players, especially Sonko Sundberg, remains to be seen. But we see that Sonko Sundberg has been used quite a bit there, and I think I'm just going to pop up and add his name to the list. Add his name to the list here as a likely candidate to play right back. I'll put it in brackets there. Okay, that is the right back position and the defense in general. So we move on upfield to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. And we have a whole lot of candidates to look at here, but we'll begin by looking at what we had back in the previous cup. So we had a definite candidate in Ibrahima Darboe, and a possible candidate in Suleiman Mare, and 2 possible but unlikely candidates. We'll just name one of them, Ibrahima Somé, because the other one was neither selected nor has appeared since. And that's what we had for defensive midfielders. So let's take a look at these candidates and see how they fared. We did actually think Ibrahima Darboe would be the starter among them, but we'll remove those highlights now. And Ibrahima Darboe was selected for the cup. However, he was not the starter we thought he was going to be. He was subbed into 2 of the games there, and what's more, he is off the team now. He did play after the cup for a few games, but last appeared in June 2022. So we're going to move him down to seemingly off the squad there, even though he does play for Roma in Italy. That factored into our thinking. He's been loaned to Lask Linz in Austria since 2023, but we did think a player who is with Roma in Italy would be a starter for the squad. When he did start, though, he was generally not a defensive midfielder, but more of a central or even an attacking midfielder when he starts. So there is a chance they'll bring that 22-year-old Ibrahima Darboe back into the fold. I wouldn't be surprised. Next, our possible candidate was Suleiman Mare, and he was selected for the squad. He started all games except for game 3, where he wasn't even on the bench. And Mare has started 10 of their 16 games over the past 2 years. Not selected for 6 matches, but 3 of those were the last 3 matches. So a bit of a concern there. In fact, he was not selected for 5 of the last 6 matches. So everything was pointing towards a likely or definite candidate until the end there. But now we have to move him. Well, he was possible last time, and he remains at the possible level for us here. Next, we had Ibrahima Sona. He was selected for the squad, but just a substitute. He started 1 game, game 3, but was subbed out at halftime there, and he has not appeared for the team since the Cup, Ibrahima Sona. Perhaps it's age, he's 35 years old now, and he has moved actually back from European teams back to Gambia, so kind of looks like he's in his twilight years, Ibrahima Sona, and we remove him from the squad list for this Cup. And that is all the candidates that we have, and we do have one candidate to add at the possible level, and that is Mamoudou Badjo. Mamoudou Badjo has just appeared recently in November 2023. He was on the bench for both of those matches in 2023. So in November, I should say, of 2023, a few weeks ago there. So Mamoudou Badjo making a late bid for joining the squad. Okay, well, we're not going to summarize the position quite yet, because defensive midfielders mix quite a bit with central midfielders. So we're going to look at the candidates in the central midfield before we summarize the position. So back in the previous Cup, we had a definite candidate in Youssoufa Bob. And we had three possible candidates, Ebu Adams and Ibrahima Colley, and Dauda Ngum, who we met once. I think he stepped in as a right back there. We had a couple of players who seemed to be off the squad, and we'll just put one of them on the list because he does feature into the narrative. That is Alassane Mane. And we also had a new candidate added in Madi Camara. So those 6 candidates we will take a look at. We did think Youssoufa Bob and Ibrahima Colley would be starters among those, but we'll remove that and start afresh as we head towards the recent Cup. Okay, we're starting with Youssoufa Bob. So Youssoufa Bob was selected for the squad, not on the bench for game 1, but then gained a starting position for the following 4 games. And however, he also last appeared for the national team in June of 2022. So he played in the Cup and for a while after, but was not selected from June. He was actually unattached to a club from July, so I suspect that that's the reason. Now he is attached to a club in Morocco, so he may come back into the squad, but we're going to see in the summary too that he and the other players who were playing kind of disappeared from the squad in June of 2022. So the long and short of it is that Youssoufa Bob moves from a definite candidate down to a possible but unlikely candidate because they've been doing without him. Next we had Ebu Adams. So Ebu Adams was a possible candidate there, but he was selected for the Cup and he started games 1 and 2, but then lost his starting position and appeared just as a substitute before that. Since that time, Ebu Adams has started 6 of their 16 games and subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1 and not selected for 8 others, but all 8 of those non-selections were in the middle of the period and he came back at the end and was fielded for the last 4 games. So Ebu Adams looks like he's making his way back into the picture. I can't help but say that he plays for Cardiff in the English League. I grew up in Cardiff, so I have a particular affection for players who play for Cardiff, and in fact I just watched them play this morning. Anyway, Ebu Adams remains as a possible candidate, but making a good late bid to get back into the squad. Next we have Ibrahima Colley, but we're actually going to move him from this discussion of central midfielders to the right wing. So he is coded as a central midfield, but actually always plays as a more attacking player. But I will say at this point that he was selected for the squad, and we'll talk about further details when we meet him again as a right winger. So we'll remove him from this list and move on to our next candidate, Dauda Ngum. Dauda Ngum was selected for the squad, but only as a substitute, just appeared in one game there. And since that time has started 3 of their 16 games, but was on the bench for 7 and not selected for 6 others in the also in the middle of the period, kind of like Ebu Adams. Oh, and I don't know if you hear him, my cat meowing in the background, but I have to stop here and deal with the cat. Okay, the cat has been dealt with, and I hope that didn't sound ominous. I just let him outside. It's unseasonably warm in Canada. It should be about minus 20 degrees Celsius, but we've been hovering around 0 all winter long. So we can actually let the cat out for maybe 15 minutes. And anyway, I'm off topic. Let's get back to it. Dauda Ngum, the long and short of it is that he remains a possible candidate on our list here. The next candidate was Alassane Mane. We had him seemingly off the squad, and he wasn't selected for the Cup. But he did return after a 2-year absence in March 2023 and actually started 3 of their 5 games, subbed in for 1, on the bench for 1, and just 1 match that he was not selected for. So selected for 5 of the last 6 matches is Alassane Mane, and so we move him from seemingly off the squad up to the possible level here too. And Mady Camara was added to the preliminary squad there, but was actually not selected. He had never appeared for the national team before being added to the squad, and he still has yet to earn his first cap for the squad. So Mady Camara is removed from our list. Kind of came and went quickly there. Let's add 1 candidate before we continue, before we move on, and that is Hamza Barry. And Hamza Barry we also put at the possible level. So he was on the squad way back since 2012, actually. He's 29 years old. And he returned after a more than 3-year absence in March 2023 and started 3 games there, and also subbed in for 3 others. So really coming back into the squad. In fact, he scored a late winning goal in qualifying against South Sudan 6 minutes into injury time. So that probably improved the coach's impression of him. Hamza Barry. Let's now summarize the central midfield candidates, and then we'll summarize the position for both defensive and central midfielders. So for candidates here, we are left with 4 possible candidates: Ebu Adams, Dauda Ngum, Alassane Mane, and Hamza Barry. And we have as a possible but unlikely candidate at this point, Youssoufa Bob. Okay, well, summarizing the position was a bit of a bewildering task. We have various formations used, various players coming and going. It all became quite complex. So I wrote a really long paragraph and then I rewrote it to try to make it a bit more digestible. So here we go. As I said, various formations and players used, but in short, Mare, and that is not central midfielder Alassane Mane, but defensive midfielder Suleiman Mare, and Bob, Youssoufa Bob, were predominant in the Cup. And shortly after, Darboe joining them when it was a 3-man midfield. Then halfway through, all 3 of those players dropped off, while 5 other players rotated with a little pattern to the rotations. So those 5 names were the ones that we've kind of covered here, along with attacking midfielder Jallo, who sometimes came back into the central position central midfield position. To further complicate that, central defender Sonko Sundberg also moved up to play as a central midfielder. So really all over the place here. And all we can really say in terms of a pattern is that attacking midfielder Jallo and Ebu Adams have started the most recently. But the situation is very unclear. And you can kind of see that because we have most of the candidates as possible candidates here. So no kind of clear starter emerging from amongst these. Just the recent candidates is what we leave you with. Okay, that is that, and we move on to left midfield. We actually do have one candidate for both left midfield and right midfielders, but I'll just say from the outset that the positions are used. They've used a 4-3-3 or some formations that had kind of left and right midfielders. But when it was really central midfielders who covered them. And the one candidate we have, Jacob Mendy, as a left midfielder. Sorry, I should go back to 2021. We didn't actually have a left midfielder in 2021, so I will move on to Jacob Mendy. He's new. He played as a left back in his only start, so the one left midfielder they had didn't play as a left midfielder. Mendy got his first appearance on the bench in June 2023. He started the last of their remaining 4 games here to November 2023. He was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 1 other. So we have Jacob Mendy as a possible candidate here. But again, the 1 game he played was as a left back. On the right side, we have a candidate. We had a candidate at the possible level back in 2021, and that was Boubacar Job. And Boubacar Job was actually selected for the Cup and subbed into 2 games there, so really a bench player. And he has since started none of their 16 games, but he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 7. However, he was not selected for the last 6 matches, so basically used decreasingly from after the Cup until now, and we have to consider him a possible but unlikely candidate, having missed the last 6 matches. So left midfield and right midfield probably will be covered there by central midfielders if they use a formation that requires the position. Okay, we move on upfield to left wingers or left attacking midfielders. Basically, this is the upper left quadrant of the field and may even include a left forward position. In fact, it does. Again, they did use a kind of bewildering number of formations even in the Cup. Let's look at the candidates we had back in the previous Cup then. And we had a possible candidate in Modou Barrow, and also possible was Moussa Juara. And we had 1 player seemingly off the squad who we won't mention because he didn't come back into the picture. We did think Modou Barrow would be the starter over there, but since he was just a possible candidate, we weren't that confident about that. And let's take a look at Modou Barrow and see. He was selected for the Cup, but he was not the starter. He was subbed into a couple of games there. And Modou Barrow last appeared in the African Cup, so is off the squad now. He's just 31 years old. Sorry, I was just looking at his club record. He has moved to Saudi Arabia in 2023, which is sometimes a bit of a retirement league. Modou Barrow then not really a factor in this one. We will move him to the possible, but no, we're just going to remove him from the squad. I don't think he'll be returning. Okay, Musa Juwara, also a possible candidate, but also off the squad. In fact, he wasn't selected for the squad last time out and has not appeared for the team since June of 2021, so before the last cup, and so we also remove him from the squad. We do have a couple of players to add, though. The first one is not a new candidate, but rather a candidate that we're moving to the left wing, and that is Musa Barrow. Not Modu Barrow, but Musa Barrow. And we have him as a definite candidate because he not only started and finished all 5 games in the cup in a couple of positions as a left winger and, as we'll see, as a forward. Started all 5 games in the cup and impressively has started all 16 of their games over the past 2 years. So you can't get a more definite candidate from that. He also has moved, though, from Bologna in Italy to Al Tawun in Saudi Arabia. So that is a bit of a step down. He was also with Atalanta in Italy when they were doing well in the Champions League. Musa Barrow, a definite candidate. And we do have one new candidate to add, and that is Aliou Fadera at the possible level. So Fadera got his first appearance in March 2023 on the bench and went on to start 2 of their remaining 6 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. So selected for 5 of the last 6 games there, Aliou Fadera, and he played as a right winger once. So it looks like he's capable of switching sides. Okay, that is the situation. Let's look at the list that we go into this cup with them. We have Musa Barrow as a definite candidate. However, not necessarily a definite left winger, because he also starts as a forward. And we have Aliou Fadera as a possible candidate. Let's look at the situation over the past couple of years. So in terms of formation, it was a left winger position in all games of the cup, except for game 4, when a different formation made it a left attacking midfielder. Since then, it's been all 3 of them, probably left wing position the most, but even becoming a left forward position in some formations. In the cup, it was Modu Barrow who played 2 games, and then Musa Barrow, who played 2 other games. And actually, we did see that left defender Toure played in the position as a left winger in game 5. Musa Barrow continued there throughout throughout African Cup qualifying, all 8 games there. And it varied as to whether he was a left winger, left attacking midfielder, or a left forward. In the second last game, he and Colley switched flanks, which doesn't mean that much. That happens sometimes. And Fadera took up the left wing position in the last game. Barrow moved to the centre forward position for that game. So Musa Barrow still seems the most likely candidate as the starter here, especially given the lack of other candidates. Aliou Fadera not really making a strong bid to be the starter there. Okay, over to the right wing, and we begin with the candidates back in the previous cup. We had likely candidate Lamine Diallo, not to be confused with Abdi Diallo, who also plays right wing. We'll be adding him to the list here. No, we moved him to attacking midfielder. We'll be adding Ibrahima Colley. Anyway, back in the previous cup, we had a possible candidate in Abdoulaye Sanyang. And that's all we had, just those 2 candidates. So let's see how they fared. Lamine Diallo, who we predicted as a starter, was selected for the squad, but was not a starter. He appeared only as a substitute in one of the games there. And he did continue on after the cup, but has not been selected since June 2022. So we're going to move Lamine Diallo from likely down to to seemingly off the squad for this cup. Our other possible candidate, Abdoulaye Sanyang, was not selected for the squad. He had been with the squad before the cup, but hadn't played in a lot of the games previous to the cup. He was struggling with injury for a little bit, and just not selected towards the end. So maybe we were a bit hopeful putting him as a possible candidate. However, he returned after a 12-month absence in March 2022. And though he only started one of their remaining 11 games, he was subbed in for 8 and on the bench for 1. So just one match that he wasn't selected for there. So he's not a starter, but is consistently called up. And so we move him to the likely level here. Also at the likely level, we have moved Ibrahim Akoli from a central midfield, which is what he's coded as, to a right wing here. We actually put him ahead of Abdoulaye Sanyang because he's more likely to start. So I think we did say that he was selected for the squad last time and started game 1. However, I don't think we said that he lost his starting position there and appeared as a substitute in 3 of the next 4 games. Since then, Ibrahim Akoli has started 6 of their 16 games, as well as subbing in for 6. So just 4 matches that he was not selected for. Most of his starts, though, have been as a right winger. I believe he started as a forward once as well, but we're moving him over to right wing here because that's been his predominant position. We also have one candidate to add at the possible level, and that is Yankuba Minte. And he got his first cap in September 2023 and started one of their remaining 3 games. However, he was injured for the last match, so that's a bit sad. As soon as he got his chance, he was out with a hamstring injury for the last 2. So that could be an injury that leaves him out for the cup. He's with Newcastle in England. And is just 19 years old, so definitely a candidate for the future, but perhaps not for this cup. Okay, let's summarize the candidates we have then. We have a likely candidate in Ibrahim Akoli and in Abdoulaye Sanyang. And we have a possible candidate in newcomer Yankuba Minte, although there is a cloud of injury hanging over him. And Lamine Jallow seems to be off the squad, but a slight chance of him coming back. In terms of the position, it was Ibrahim Akoli starting as a right winger in game 1 of the cup, but it was right back Janko and then attacking midfielder Abdi Jallow, each playing twice. So really no firm candidate for the position, and the position continued to be unsettled with several players tried out. Jallow predominated, but rotated with Colley here and with forward Asan Cisse. So Colley and Jallow played the last 2 games. So we did leave Jallow as an attacking midfielder because he plays in other positions too. And but Colley really hasn't played the position enough for us to think he's going to be a starter. But we'll deal with that in the spotlight review at the end. Okay, that is the end of right wingers and of the midfield in general. So we move forward to forwards, and attacking midfielders is what we first look at. And back in the previous cup, we had a possible candidate in Boubacar Traoré, and that's all that we had for this position. So we thought Boubacar Traoré might be a starter, but we weren't totally confident in that. And it turns out he was selected for the squad, but was not a starter. He was on the bench for the whole time, actually. In fact, not even on the bench. Only for games 1 and 2 was he on the bench, and then not even brought up to the bench for the next 3. So we were wrong in our prediction there. And he did actually play after the Cup, but not since March of 2022. So Boubacar Traoré we removed from the list. And that's it. But we have said that we moved Abdoulaye Diallo over to here, and we have him now as a definite candidate. And we've seen that he plays all over the field, central midfielder, right wing. Generally, he was more attacking until recently, and tends to be more of an attacking player. But we'll see. So we said he started games 1, 2, and 4 of the Cup, but was injured for game 5 there, and not even on the bench. Since then, Abdoulaye Diallo has started 10 of their 16 games. He was subbed in for 3, injured for 2, so I think that Cup injury extended forward. Just one match that Abdi Diallo was not selected for. So again, all over the field, we can't really predict where he's going to be, but we will summarize the position of central attacking midfielder. That position was used only once in the Cup, and it was the defensive midfielder Darboe who played central attacking midfielder in the Cup. And it was only used once since the Cup, and it was Ibrahima Colley who played it, making me question why we've moved Abdi Diallo to the attacking midfield. Anyway, he could really go anywhere, and we'll also see that he played as forward. Okay, let's move on. We do have one candidate as a secondary striker, and we will just mention him. We had him as a possible candidate in the previous Cup. That's Youssoufa N'Diaye. And we actually thought that he might be a starter, but we were wrong again there too, because he was just a substitute coming in for one game. He came in 72 minutes into the game and then got a red card at 87. So actually managed to accumulate 2 yellow cards in just 15 minutes there. He did continue on after the Cup and last appeared in May 2022, Youssoufa N'Diaye. So we'll move him down to seemingly off the squad here. There's a very slight chance of him coming back. He did take a bit of a step down in his career or in his club affiliations. He was with Boa Vista in Portugal, but then moved to Al Marqiya in Qatar. And I don't mean to insult the Middle Eastern leagues, but they do tend to be a bit of a retirement league, especially when we see players moving from kind of bigger European clubs to the Saudi or the Middle Eastern teams. Okay, so that is Youssoufa N'Diaye, and we don't really bring any secondary strikers into this Cup, but we move on to forwards. So back in the previous Cup, we had 3 definite candidates for forwards. The first one was Moussa Barrow. As we've seen, we've moved him over to the left wing there. Hassan Cisse and Mohamed Badamost. We had 2 possible candidates, Dembo Darboe. That's not to be confused with the defensive midfielder also named Darboe, and Nuha Marong as a possible candidate. And we had 1 possible but unlikely candidate, but we leave him off the list because he didn't come into the picture. So Moussa Barrow, as we saw, was a starter in the Cup, started all 5 games there, and we saw that he started both as a left winger and as a forward, and started all 16 of their games, so remains a definite candidate here Just going to remove the highlights. By the way, we did think Musa Barrow and Hassan Cisse would be starters, and Muhammad Badamosi and Dembo Darbo bench players. That's what we thought back then. So we were right about Musa Barrow. Let's see how we did on Hassan Cisse. He was selected, of course, and he started games 1 and 2, so we were right as far as that went. However, he lost his starting position and was just a substitute in games 4 and 5. Since then, however, he started 11 of their 16 games, and he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1 other, so always selected. So Hassan Cisse remains a definite candidate for us too. He has also moved to the Saudi Arabian League. He was with FC Zurich from 2018 to 22. Then he moved to Lecce in Greece for a year. Sorry, Lecce in Italy for a year, and now has moved to Damak in Saudi Arabia. Damak seems to be collecting quite a few names there. Anyway, Hassan Cisse, a definite candidate. Muhammad Badamosi we had as a definite candidate there too, but we didn't think he'd be a starter, and we were right. He was a substitute, actually just coming into 2 games there. And no, wait, he did go on to start game 5 at the end there. And he has since started 2 of their 16 games and subbed in for 7 and on the bench for 7 others. So in short, he rarely starts, but he is always called up to the squad. So he remains for us a definite candidate in terms of being selected for this cup. Next, we have Dembo Darbo. Dembo Darbo. He was selected for the squad actually, and appeared in 1 game as a substitute, and was called up to the team after the cup, but not after March 2022. So that was his last appearance for the squad. Yet another player who has moved to the Saudi Arabia league there. So Dembo Darbo is now off. Oh no, we'll put him as a possible, but seemingly off the squad, giving him a sliver of a chance of making it back here. Finally, we had Nuha Marong as a possible candidate there. He was not selected for the squad. He did make the preliminary squad. But not selected for the cup. He did get called up after the cup, though, but his last appearance for the team was in June 2022. So he's been off for a while. We'll also put him as seemingly off the squad, because there is a small chance of him coming back. And we have just 1 player to add, and it's at the possible but unlikely level. It is Ali Sow. Or Ali Soe, and he returned after a more than 3-year absence in March 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 6 games. Then he was subbed in for 1, injured for 1, and then not selected for 3 others. The second possible candidate, Nuha Marong, on the other hand, was not selected for the squad. He did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. He was called up, though, after the cup, but only until June 2022. So he made his last appearance for the team in June 2022. So we'll move him from possible down to seemingly off the squad, a slight chance of him coming back. So we won't remove him from the squad altogether. We do have 1 player to add, and it is Ali Sow, or Ali Soe, who we add at the possible but unlikely level. He got his first appearance in March 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 6 games, subbed in for 1 and injured for 1, and not selected for 3, including the last 2 matches. So maybe possible, especially given his club affiliations are actually pretty good. That's CSKA Sofia in Bulgaria from 2019 to 2021, Rostov in Russia since 2021, and loaned to Ankara Gucu in Turkey since 2022. So all of those are fairly respectable clubs. So I'm going to move him up to the possible level here. Ali Soe. Let's finish by summarizing the candidates and then the position. So we now have 3 definite candidates. Well, Musa Barrow will actually remove from the list because we have him as a definite candidate on the left winger role. We have then Asan Cisse and Muhammad Badamosi as definite candidates. Badamosi more of a substitute though. We have Ali So as a possible candidate, and Dembo Darbo and Nuha Marong seemingly off the squad, but with a small chance of coming back in. In terms of the position, it was 2 centre forwards in 2 games of the Cup and 1 centre forward in 3 of the games. So Musa Barrow played in the position 2 times and otherwise played as a left winger. Cisse played the first 2 games, but then was replaced by Barrow and also by Badamosi, so not clearly a starter there. After the Cup, it seems like they tried Ibrahima Colley and attacking midfielder Trawali in the position, but that didn't work out, and Cisse regained the starting position for the rest of the African Cup qualifying games and for the first World Cup qualifier in November, but Musa Barrow stepped in there for the last game. So definitely a bit of rotation there between primarily Cisse and Barrow, with other players being kind of tried out in the position. All right, that brings us to the end of the forwards and the end to our look at the players, at the candidates. And we move on to section 3, the closing. We begin that with a bit of fun, a run through of the spotlight review, and we're going to predict who we think the starters are. So we go back to the manager and Tom Saintflet. Well, we don't think he's going to be fired before the Cup. We do see a couple of problems, especially in the central midfield. That seems quite undecided, although there's no lack of candidates there. And a couple of other positions, especially right winger, kind of undecided. Among the goalkeepers, we are a bit unsure because it seemed like Boubacar Gay, but then for the last 2 games, Modou Job stepped in. So we're going to hedge our bets and predict that it'll be either one of the 2 of them. We would kind of edge towards Boubacar Gay or a rotation between the 2 of them. In central defence, we think Omar Colley is a definite candidate, and we think there'll be a bit of rotation there among James Gomez, Boubacar Sane, and also Noah Sonko Sundberg maybe showing up in that rotation of central defence. However, we'll come back to him. We'll add him to the list a bit later. At left back, we're going to kind of tentatively say Ibu Toure. He looked like he was going to be the starter until he was not selected for the last 2 matches, and a different player came in, but we're going to put him in a blue highlight here, suggesting we think it's likely rather than throwing our full confidence behind it. However, we are confident that Noah Sonko Sundberg will be a starter. That is actually more likely as a right back than as the central defender that he is coded to be, but we think he'll be on the field, and the right back position really hasn't been sorted out, so we think he'll be playing out of position there. In the central midfield, that's really a mess. We have about 6 candidates at the possible level. Most likely right now would be Abdi Jallo playing as a central midfielder, or Ebu Adams, but we're not confident enough to put either of them on the list here, and we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Left wing or left attacking midfielder, the kind of upper left quadrant of the field, we think Musa Barrow is going to be there as the starter. On the right wing, though, we are not so sure. It could be Ibrahima Colley, but hasn't really occupied the position enough to convince us that it's his. So we're not going to put a candidate there on the right wing. It could also be Abdi Barrow equally as much as Ibrahim Macaulay, so we're not sure. We are going to put Abdi Jallow on the list, though. I think I've been saying Barrow instead of Jallow. We have him as a central attacking midfielder, but that actually doesn't really mean much. It just means he's kind of a generally all over the place, filling in holes kind of player. So we've seen him as a central midfielder, as a right winger. He may pop up there or anywhere else. We initially had him coded as a right back, so we might even see him there. But Abdoulaye Jallow, we think, is going to be a starter for the squad. Finally, in the forward line, we really think Hassan Cisse is a starter there. But we're also going to put Musa Barrow as a possible starter there. We have him as a definite left winger, but he does start as a forward sometimes. So Hassan Cisse not necessarily starting all of the games, or he has played as a right winger before too, but we think he is fundamentally the starter. Okay, that is our spotlight review, and we're going to finish by previewing part 2 of the media cast here. So in part 1 here, we made a list of candidates going into the cup. In part 2, we're going to review that list when the final squad comes out and see who made it and who didn't. We'll also give an update on injuries. We had a couple of injury clouds hanging over a couple of the players here, but once we get closer to the cup, we'll be able to give more accurate information on that. So we expect that to come out in January, early January, so hopefully we'll see you there for part 2. We originally planned to tag on our past, present and future plans for the mediacast, but we have instead decided to put a link to that 10-minute video in the show notes. It covers what we're working on and what we plan to do over the next 9 months. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.